Welcome back to the RV Shenanigans. I almost said unplugged. Welcome back to the RV Shenanigans show. I'm Ryan.
I'm Lauren, and together we are Millers in Motion. We recently sold our ranch here in Texas, and now we are having new adventures in our Alliance Valor toy hauler. My latest adventure is that Ryan is hangry and delirious today.
It's been a minute since I've eaten anything or on a new diet, and I could use some food. But we're going to power through the food as I kick Lauren underneath the table. If you're watching this on YouTube, you are having all kinds of what have I gotten into. If you're listening to this, you don't have any clue of what you've gotten into. So
stay tuned.
Yeah, sorry. Today we are going to be talking about the all-important intrawebs.
Intrawebs, how we stay connected. Some of you guys go camping and RVing to get away from it all. We take it all with us.
Well, it is our home, so we
and our business.
Have to be able to function. Now, we have a very high internet usage, and so we get a lot of questions of how do we connect? How do we stay connected in weird places that we like to go to? And in the reality of YouTube life, we have to upload a bunch of things, and so having a secure connection, and then also how a lot of our products inside the RV work. So,
all right.
With that being said, it is almost the end of January or December. Good night. It is almost the end of December, which is shocking. I can't. It's time is no longer relevant in my brain. It's moving too fast.
Is that just today, or is that?
It's more and more as we go, but for now, I'm going to say today. But with that being said, we are going to be at the 2024 Florida RV Super Show. So if you are coming, make sure to come by and say hi, because we're going to be doing live podcast recordings in the Alliance RV booth. So big thanks to our little duck friend and the guys over at Alliance RV.
And we will be there all week.
You sure?
I will be. I don't know about you. Not at this rate.
Make sure to come say hi. Also, down below, there's going to be a link to our website where you can kind of follow along with everything, get links to the other social media. So do us a favor, go check that out and let us know. We also have the newsletter. You can sign up for that. All you got to do is type your little email address in there, or big if it's long, and you'll get the monthly newsletter we do that kind of goes over all kinds of stuff.
All kinds. And it's called Miller Mischief for a reason.
Exactly, because mischievous. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with RV Internet. You remember that sound of like dial-up in the 90s? Like,
that's not how I remember it, but sure.
Every time I hear internet, well, that's like the Ryan version. That's as good as we get. That's, I don't know why, but like the internet actually has a sound. And that's it. So the internet is annoying based on the sound.
Does it smell like the color 9?
No, but it tastes like the letter W for some reason. Okay, so we're going to be talking about internet, but specifically RV internet, and because it's a unique demon.
It is. It's a whole different beast. You know, if you guys aren't familiar, we actually had a house and ranch and everything for about a decade. And before that, we had apartments and things. So we have had internet in very different scenarios. Our ranch was in the middle of nowhere. So internet, like we didn't have quick, easy internet. The apartments were in Austin, Houston, big places where we had whatever internet we wanted. And now we need our internet to move.
Right. So I'm going to do a couple things. We've had 2 RVs now. We had a Grand Design Solitude and our current Alliance Valor 44V14. And we've had 2 versions of a kind of similar system. So I'm going to start by telling you what we had and what we currently have. So our very first system, which we have a lot of the components still from, was from Mobile Must Have. I don't mind saying that. I like their products. They are just a service. They are selling things. We bought a package through them that also involved our cell phone plan. There's a whole section on cell phone plans, and they change a lot, just as an FYI. If anything's going to get confusing, it's going to be that. What we did is we put a Pepwave Max Transit Duo, which means you can fit up to 4 wireless SIM cards internally. And then it also has the ability to be what's called a MIMO, or you can attach a MIMO antenna, which is a multiple in, multiple out. That's how you're able to get those multiple cell signals in. And it can also produce a few Wi-Fi signals back out the other way to rebroadcast, essentially. You also can bring in campground Wi-Fi via that and a few other options. So What we did is we installed that router. We drilled a hole through our roof. Lauren had a panic attack. I kept going anyway. And we also mounted a Husky or a Parsec Husky 7-in-1 MIMO antenna, the antenna version of our deal. And that's what plugged in. That's what actually gave us our coverage and rebroadcasted the Wi-Fi and all that good stuff. Within that, we had a grandfathered AT&T card. Again, we're going to touch base on the what's here in a little bit. And we also had a T-Mobile card that we purchased through Mobile Must Have on a monthly basis, and whatever campground Wi-Fi. So that was our very first system.
And if all of that made you go, huh?
Well,
and kind of want to tune out, don't worry. My understanding of all that he just said was we had internet.
yeah, you can stream what you want and do what you want.
So I promise, stick around. I will translate for you.
That's Lauren's the official translator of this episode. In addition to that, we did eventually add Starlink, and we also did add the T-Mobile home internet, the 5G little towery thing you can get for $50 a month through them. So now fast forward to this rig. So we are still a little bit in flux. It is really close to being completely done. RVs are never completely done, shocker.
Never.
But as far as our initial list of things, that's getting close to being completely done. So the only thing we're missing is we haven't permanently decided what we're going to do from an antenna perspective on the router.
Yeah, that's a we decision.
We still have the router. Well, the big reason why is because we haven't installed our solar battery lithium setup yet. And so because of, I want to know where panels are going to go, I'm kind of going to do, if we are going to do something for an antenna in addition to what we already have done, that's going to be the time, because if I can put it on the junction box that's going to encompass the cabling for the batteries to come down from the solar, then I can kind of two birds, one stone that. So that's what we're waiting for. In the meantime, the Pepwave Max Transit Duo comes with little paddle antennas. We've just reattached those to it, and it works good enough.
Agreed. It works.
You going to translate any of that?
It works.
Ta-da! You might hear Lauren say it just works a bunch in this one. So that's kind of the overview of where we're coming from. So we're going to dive a little bit more into it. Now, this structure is going to take a little bit, This podcast structure is going to take a little bit of a different look to it. Typically, we have a conversation. I kind of lead that conversation because I've got the notes. If you notice, if you're watching this, I have no notepad in front of me. Lauren has officially taken over. She's the captain now.
Aha, suckers.
A movie quote there for you. What movie?
Don't know.
Literally, it's called Captain Phillips. Tom Hanks, come on. Anyway, apparently movie quotes aren't going to be our thing. So she's going to kind of drive the ship, and she's going to answer or ask a bunch of questions that we get through the YouTube videos we've done on this previously, and then take my answers and translate them into something that makes sense for you guys. So now that they have a base overview, where are we going with this?
Why? Right? Because some people are going to say, what, do you just need it so you can surf Facebook? And no, that's not the case. So the biggest thing is,
how do you surf Facebook? Do you have to use a boogie board or a...
Like that. If you were on YouTube, you caught that. And if not, you just got awkward silence.
Yeah.
So why do
it's
we need
an audio podcast?
Why do we need internet? Why do we need it to come with us? Why is it important?
Because I like technology, and things that go fast are fun. Oh, the real reason. So obviously, in some capacity, you will have a need for internet. Now, a lot of people that are just part-timers, maybe you don't, and that's perfectly fine. And
sure.
One of the things we'll talk about is like understand your need before you buy a system. And so for us, I work completely remotely. Lauren is starting to dabble into that world. Obviously, like our YouTube videos, we film everything in, believe it or not, 8K and down res to 4K. And so our video sizes are pretty robust. They're big. And so that takes quite a bit of powerful internet and a good structure to actually upload those videos. In addition to that, we don't use like DirecTV or anything like that, like a satellite antenna for our TV. So we stream everything. So some of those can be big, some are not, but we always try to have a pretty secure internet. And I've designed our system to where it's as versatile as it can possibly be. And I will say there's a caveat to everything we're talking about. I'm trying to be as cost effective as possible.
Thank you.
Now, with that being said, this is not a very cost effective section. Like, it's not, mobile internet is never going to be as cheap as home internet.
Agreed. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just never is, because you end up wanting redundancies. Because, like, let's say we have an AT&T card we pay for. Well, we might be in a spot that's a dead spot, or AT&T is a little lacking. And we all know, like, AT&T has its strong points, Verizon has its strong points, T-Mobile has its strong points. Well, because your home moves, it's a little different. You may have a weak point and now you just don't have internet, so you build in redundancy so that you have coverage everywhere you go.
So I'm going to add to that a little bit. The other thing is, if you don't know, I practice medicine. So sometimes I'm on call. So
You just practice it?
just practice. I'll never perfect it. Nobody ever will. Anyways, so I have to be able to pull up a laptop and operate a big electronic medical records system. So I can't operate with crappy intermittent Wi-Fi, to be quite frank.
Well, and because of HIPAA laws and all that kind of stuff, I will say that there are things on our system that you don't have to have as a normal consumer because certain HIPAA laws don't require Lauren. Like it's not a cloud-based system. She's actually taking over a secure server at whatever facility so that she obtains and the company stays on whatever HIPAA laws revolve around that.
Right.
I don't have to understand the laws. I just have to know the requirements so she can do it.
Exactly.
And so we've designed our system in conjunction with that. So that is something that makes us need a slightly more robust than even the average content creator, mobile worker, anything else. So.
And then in addition to both of us working on the road, that sort of thing, we operate our home security system, our Ring, through that. And so when we're away from the rig trying to explore and have adventures, we want to know if smoke alarms are going off or, the CO2 monitor, anything like that, water sensors.
Temperature monitoring.
And so then we have the Govies for the temperature monitoring to make sure that the dogs are safe. So I know that we don't want it just for funsies. We have really a lot of use for keeping the internet with us.
Although it is really good internet is fun because that means I can game and we can do other things as well because I'm such a gamer.
Such a gamer.
I like my golf game every once in a while. I'll throw in some baseball or football and
I know.
I'll forget about it in 6 months and then go, oh yeah, I forgot I have a PS5.
All right. So that kind of hits a little bit on why this is so important to us. Now then, let's go ahead and jump into options. So as far as that goes, everybody says, well, but the campground has Wi-Fi. Why can't you just use it?
Tell you what, you don't have to go in the camp. Just go near a campground. Try to get on. So like, for instance, I'm going to use the park we're at as an example. So it's probably a little bit smaller of a park than most places. I believe it has about 70 sites, 80 sites, somewhere in there. A lot of parks seem to be closer to 120 to 150. Obviously, big resorts are going to be a lot bigger. Now, there's two types of campground Wi-Fi you could potentially have. The most common is going to be just a straight Wi-Fi signal, which will be rebroadcasted throughout the park. And that's typically where you see anywhere you see like electrical panels and that kind of stuff, if you see this random little square or round kind of antenna thing sticking up, that's the internet rerouter. The other is going to be hardwired into every pedestal. That's incredibly rare, but it's becoming more and more frequent. If you don't have a way to plug in your router to that, it's completely useless to you.
Right.
We kind of do. We have the ability. I just haven't figured out how to get it from point A to point B in this coach. The old RV, I had it down to a science. I could actually do that. I did it. We were able to do it at one park, and I don't even think you remember this, but we did it at one park, greatest speeds of all time because nobody can do it, so there's nobody on it. But in this RV being a toy hauler, it's a little different. So we can run through a window and up to the router. There's a couple different things we can do.
So I would say, but that's a big caveat, is whatever campground you're at, even if they have the best Wi-Fi in the world, it's going to be shared. Yeah. So if you have 100 sites and everybody on that wonderful Wi-Fi, all of a sudden, maybe it's not so wonderful.
Well, and remember this too. So like, I'm going to use our rig as an example. So we have 3 TVs in our rig. We legitimately use all 3. So I have 3 Apple TVs.
Not at the same time.
Not at the same time, but we do have 3 Apple TVs. I have a laptop. You have a laptop. Mm-hmm. You keeping count? That's 5 things so far. So I'm going to keep count now. So that's 5 things. We both have cell phones. That's 7. Now you think about security cameras. We have 5 of them in total. Now the Ring monitoring system itself is 1, which controls all the other things. The Govee sensors each connect individually. So there's 4 or 5 more. I mean, how many devices are we at right now?
17-ish.
So that's 17. There's 2 people in one coach. Mm-hmm. We would have 17 devices on that Wi-Fi.
Don't forget my work laptop. That's 18.
Okay, 18. Typically, you're not on both laptops at the same time, but yeah, I mean, just 2 people, 18. Now, if you had like 2 or 3 kids, add 2 more devices per kid, roughly, to that. You may not have the security cameras, so there's some fluctuation there, but it's never just one thing. It's not like one RV set, and I think that's what RV parks kind of forget sometimes is like, an RV rolls in, it's not like, oh, they might need, like, that's one internet person. It's not. It's like 17.
And it takes a lot to stream some of the, like Netflix
Right.
or those sorts of things too. So,
God
anyways,
forbid you have to do a Zoom call. Like the most
true.
internet laboring things are going to be like e-meetings. So Google Workspace meetings, Zoom calls, that kind of stuff, because you are not only downloading at an incredibly high rate, you're uploading at an incredibly high rate at the same time. And so, yeah, that's, campground Wi-Fi. I think I checked my email on it once here.
Right.
In a pinch, like we lost power or something. I don't know. They didn't have power either, so I'm not sure what we were using there. But you can't rely on campground Wi-Fi. Every once in a while, you're going to stumble across a good one. I'm not saying this is the norm. It kind of is. But like we were at Camp Fimfo in the Texas Hill Country. Their Wi-Fi was amazing.
It was really good.
I don't know what they had. It's almost like every 10 spots had its own commercial T1 line. It was insane. So, but that's a huge expense that most places are not going to incur. So,
And that is more of a resort style place. So I'm sure that they empty their pockets a little bit differently than some of your older RV parks did. So let's agree that your campground Wi-Fi should not be relied on as your primary source if you have a heavy need like we do. So then everybody like me says, I'll bring my cell phone, use it as a hotspot.
So you can do that. So I think it's important to know that it's kind of like when you're getting into YouTube, and if you're a creator and you're watching this or listening to this, everybody always says, use the best camera you have. Sometimes it's a really fancy DSLR, like you guys on YouTube are watching us on right now. Sometimes it's the camera that's in your pocket that's attached to your cell phone. So it's better to capture the moment than to not capture the moment.
Absolutely.
Sometimes whatever works. So your phone comes with a hotspot, typically, at least at the current moment. So this is all we're talking about this in November of 2023. So obviously, if you're listening to this far in the future, things may have changed, especially when it comes to cell phone plans. So at the moment, at least on our AT&T, we have 10 gigabytes per line that we can use in a mobile hotspot configuration. I'm going to repeat that. 10 gigs. That's it. You may go, 10 gigs is plenty. Our consumption, now we're heavy users, so don't get this wrong. Our consumption last month in October was 794 gigs. 10 gigs ain't enough. I mean, now if you're a part-timer and you're going camping for like every once in a while,
Right.
over-air antenna for TV, DVDs, bring a hard drive with movies on it. Don't worry about it. Also, you're probably not using as much internet if you're on vacation.
Right.
We're working. And so that's very, very different. So you can use your hotspot. That's the cheapest way to get Wi-Fi. I can tell you right now, the Wi-Fi coming out of your cell phone too, it's not going to support everything we just said. It's too small. It's going to be like, I need to connect my laptop to check an email. There's no way you're going to be able to do Zoom calls on that kind of stuff. It's just not going to be fast enough. And this is assuming you have service in the area you are.
I like to use it to play my crossword.
You can probably do that assuming you have service. Unless you have AT&T where we are, then you're not.
So, but also you can get cell service through like the little box that we have. So we have our cell phones through AT&T, but then we have the T-Mobile box.
So
Translate.
What she's talking about is the T-Mobile home internet box. There is a AT&T version of that. It's not as good. No, I'm not trying to blow smoke at them, but it's not. And then you have the Verizon, which is the most comparable. I'm not sure of pricing on Verizon and AT&T's at the current time of filming. T-Mobile's is $50 a month plus tax. Again, whatever your taxes are in your area and whatever you're subject to, it is its own 5G box. So like our Pepwave, there is a 5G version of our Pepwave router. We have the 4G LTE version because it was cheaper and 5G really wasn't as big of a thing when we did it. Now at the time of filming, 5G is much larger. So this box sits off to the side. You can use it as a home internet box. Like you don't have to have anything else to work. Just plug it in. It does connect to 110. It will not connect to a 12-volt system. So if you're going to be off-grid, you're going to have an inverter for it. Plug it in, turn it on. It's got its own Wi-Fi broadcasting. It is enough where it can support your entire home for the most part because it's built for home. Now, again, and they can turn this off literally in 5 minutes, and what I'm about to say makes zero sense. But at the time of filming, you can move it around. You do have to have a valid location to start it because they want to make sure that it can actually work and connect because it has to connect to you for the first time in the location you give them. If it doesn't, it will lock you out.
Right.
So you have to, essentially, if you pick a different address, go to that address, turn it on, get it connected, then go wherever you want. Now, what they do say is that if you do move it, obviously you're subject. They're terrified, at T-Mobile that you're going to move it and blame them because it doesn't work. You're subject to the cell service in that area. So if you go up to like Yellowstone, for instance, it ain't going to work. If your cell phone doesn't work, it's not going to work.
Nothing's going to work.
Understand that. But it is when it comes to cell phone plan, that kind of stuff, it is a significantly less expensive option because some cell phone plans, especially through third parties, like Mobile Must Have, that resales, that's all that is. It's reselling a cell plan. So they buy a section of the network and then they sign people up, and if it gets too over cumbersome, then essentially whoever network they bought it on, let's say T-Mobile, will go back and say, hey, you're overwhelming the network. You're either going to go up in price or we're going to start throttling everybody. And so that's where throttling starts to come in, which is essentially throttling is just the slowing down of your internet to manage the data system. So in other words, just like anything else, imagine internet like a pipeline, like a water hose. And if you have that thing full bore and the hose can't hold the pressure, what happens? It breaks. So essentially like a water regulator valve for your RV is them throttling. It's turning it back a little bit so that everybody can have some internet versus nobody having none kind of a situation.
So then let's go into the category of like other internet. Say that campground Wi-Fi doesn't exist. You've used up all of your hotspot data allotment, and then you tried for the box, and maybe you're in a place that doesn't work. Something about that. What else can you do? So
there's a couple of different versions of things. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are so many internet options out there.
So many.
It's staggering. So especially in cell phone space, I shouldn't say cell phone, cell data plans and hotspots and those types of things. There's so many, I'm not going to be able to go into all of them. So if I don't hit the one you're thinking about, I'm super sorry. Leave a comment if you're on YouTube. If you are listening to us in your favorite podcast platform, there's a link to our contact information down there. Click on that, shoot us an email. I'll be happy to reply. But like you start thinking about like off-grid stuff and you start thinking about like, well, satellite internet's a thing. So when we were in our ranch, we had initially something called HughesNet. And if you like really big satellite dishes that don't do a very good job at internet, get some HughesNet. But
HughesNet was kind of, I don't know if it was a first necessarily, but this was a long time ago when it was one of very few options.
It's different. So what HughesNet is, it's about the size of a DirecTV dish, if you remember how big those were. And what it did is there was a satellite orbiting wherever, and it shot up there and it shot a signal back. Well, it's a high orbit satellite, kind of like where the DirecTV ones are. It's up, right? So then you enter good old Elon Musk, Mr. X owner now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look. Twitter. Sorry. So what Elon built was called SpaceX. Obviously, everybody knows about SpaceX as far as like sending people up into space and all that. But what they also spawned off was Starlink. So Starlink has been hit with a whole lot of, it's amazing or it's freaking awful. It doesn't seem to be a happy in-between.
No, it's a love or hate, it seems.
I'm not going to lie. I'm the in-between guy. I like it in the right circumstances. It is not, I don't feel like it is a solution to all internet.
Right. I don't feel like it was a primary only solution. But when used in conjunction with other things, I think it helped.
If you happen to find this podcast, we are talking specifically about RVing. So for a house, it could actually be a primary.
Sure, yeah.
Because you're not moving around and you're going to, your trees don't magically just get up and move 6 feet to the right, whereas ours do. And so in RV terms, it's not a primary. But when you head out, especially out west, where cell phone, like you get out into like the Moab area, the desert out there, there's not a lot of cell towers out there. And so if you're looking at a cell phone coverage map, that kind of dead area out there, Starlink works great.
Right.
And what Starlink is, it's a low orbit satellite. So if you ever freaked out and thought aliens were coming at night, like you see the line of like those little lights going across, that's a Starlink train is what they're called. And people actually like go look for them now. It's become a thing, kind of like geocaching, except with satellites. But there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these satellites just in a low orbit. And so because it's a low orbit, and the way the dish works, the communication to and from is so much faster than what like HughesNet uses. Mm-hmm. And so you're getting ridiculous speeds. Now, Starlink has its downfalls too. If you're in a heavy populated area, so they have a couple plans. They have standard Starlink, which is like residential, which is it's not going to move. You're at one spot. Don't worry about it. That works perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. If you have Roam, which is what we have, or the RV version of it, it's meant to move around. Well, what they can't attribute to is they still have to, everybody in the internet has to deal with bandwidth. And the problem with Starlink is you don't know where, like we know where we're going for the next 3 or 4 months, but we don't know where we're going to be in like 12 months, for instance.
Right.
Actually, it's the holidays. We'll probably be back in Texas for that. But for the most part, like we know about 2 or 3 months out. So, but they don't know either. And so they can't attribute like to move satellites around to accommodate for our movement. And so Roam customers are at a lower priority. So like if we roll into Fort Worth, like for instance, because we're here for Christmas, the problem we run into is every residential person here that has Starlink gets priority over us. And so when they get into a heavy use scenario, we get deprioritized. So like during the day, we'll be pulling 230, 240 gigs
Yeah, that'd
down,
be
or
great.
megabytes down.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. I should have corrected you.
We're pulling that, super fast speeds down and reasonable up. But then like dinner will roll around and we drop down to like 20, maybe 30 megs.
Yeah.
And so it's very situational. Is that a bad thing? It just depends. Like most of our internet usage is actually during the day because we're working. After 5, 6, 7 o'clock, it's mostly just streaming here and there.
Now they're messing with our TV time
that kind of stuff.
because we spend so much time doing that.
So, but Starlink would be that option if you're looking for anything outside the cell phone base.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. So now that we know a little bit more about some of our options, campground, all that sort of stuff, give these guys, for those who are interested, I guess, a look at our performance. Like, what do we need to operate? What makes this manageable?
So, and that's the hard thing is something is better than nothing when you get into internet. But for us, again, we're super different because our upload speeds need to be pretty high.
But what is that? Like,
so like for us, when we're uploading a video, as an example, I'm going to say like a 10 gigabyte size video, which is medium for us. That upload on, if you're doing 200 megabytes per minute or per second, however it's measured when it's uploading, then, I mean, that type of a video typically on the cell service side is going to take, 30 to 45 minutes. And I say that because it typically kind of varies.
Right.
Like sometimes it's really fast, sometimes it's still fast, but just not as fast. It never gets to a point like if you're watching a video where it starts to buffer, because videos will download before you get to it and then play. And as long as it stays out in front, that's why Starlink's kind of unique, because you'll lose service for 2 minutes, but it downloaded so much of it, you're never going to see it. So for us, if we can be above really about 50 to 60 megs per second download and above 8 to 10, we can function. It's not quick, but we can function. I prefer to be, I'm not going to lie, it's one of those situations where if I can achieve 250 down all the time and like 25 up, we can do anything we want whenever, however we want. But for us to legitimately function, that's kind of our standards. Again, heavy users. So most people could probably function on 15. Like you're going to be able to play a 4K video on like Netflix at about 12 to 15 megabytes per second down. And then upload. Most people don't have an upload problem. It's how quickly you want Facebook to refresh because you're sending information to them. But that file size is so compressed that as long as you have a couple of up, you're normally pretty fine. Now to do like a Zoom meeting and all that, you'll want to be closer to like 12 to 15 megabytes per second upload, and a download probably closer to 30 to 35 minimum. That's assuming nothing else is on the network and nothing else is consuming. So like you think about a cell phone, it's always connected. So it's always kind of taking up that bandwidth or that space no matter what. Whereas a computer, if it's on, is doing that. If it's off, it's not. If an iPad's on, same thing, it's doing it. It's kind of like electrical. If you've ever done like a solar system install or anything, like you have to understand that there's always going to be a little bit of what's called parasitic drain. So that's whereas like our coffee pot's plugged into the outlet right now. Well, it's not on. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It might come back on in a minute, but for now it's not. But because it's got a little bit of a memory function, it's always using just a little teeny weeny bit. And so that's how cell phones and computers all work in that same manner. They're always using just a little bit unless you completely turn them off.
So if somebody came up to you, a third party, and just said, hey, I have this really cool internet new thingamabooger, and what are the questions you're going to ask to know if it would even support us or fit us? Are those the numbers that you're looking for?
So somewhat, but I think for me is when I'm looking at system stuff or new things, I treat the questioning as like a funnel. And so like at the broad end or the widest end of that funnel, the first question is going to be, well, how does it, like, what's the basics of how it works? Is it cell-based? Is it satellite-based? Is this piggybacking on technology that already exists, or did you create new technology? And some of those answers, like new technology, I'm always a little bit skeptical of. I love the idea. Trust me, I go down the rabbit hole as far as watching YouTube videos on it.
Right, but we can't put our livelihood into a chance.
No, and that's the thing. Like, if I think that there's something that has a lot of promise and we can get it at ground level on an inexpensive, like lock in a rate kind of a thing, it may be worth it if I feel like it's enough. But Starlink was kind of one of those things. But it just with our livelihoods. Now, if you're a casual camper, yeah, go for it. As long as you can get out at any time. That's my big thing is like, I just don't want to sign some long contract and be stuck with something that I don't necessarily like. And so we don't do anything that involves a contract typically.
Right.
All of our stuff has a month-to-month component.
Okay. So now that we know all of that, let's talk about installing things, because he was not wrong whenever I said drilling the hole in the roof was terrifying.
I only missed like 3 or 4 times. Just kidding, I didn't.
Thank you for correcting that. We measured, it must have been 35 times where to put this stupid thing.
Both sides.
Oh my gosh. It was terrifying, but it worked. It got the job done. We did a lot of research on how to seal it. So anyways, go into the installation of many of these.
Well, let me start by saying, pick the right antenna for you, because it might not be what it was for us. We had a essentially military grade version of something. Shocker, I went for the fastest. But again, depending on what you're looking at. So there's omnidirectional and there's directional. Omnidirectional is going to be more of the domes where it broadcasts in 360. So like, it doesn't matter where the cell tower is. But typically because of that, you're not going to have as wide of a dispersion, right? So like if you have a directional, pointing makes an antenna. It kind of looks like an arrowhead almost. You actually want to try and point it at a cell tower. And there's different apps and things out there where you can locate cell towers and find where the frequencies are coming from so that you can point them. Those typically can go a lot farther, so you can get a better signal from further away, but you have to go through that legwork of finding it and aiming it. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're like wherever your source is coming from, it's a cell tower, or if you're trying to rebroadcast Wi-Fi, whatever it is. I didn't want to do all that. I just wanted it to work up there. And so that's why we did the 360 or the omnidirectional.
Yeah, we do go for low maintenance. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like things to work that I don't have to keep touching over and over and over, even on like travel days, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're redoing our bathroom and our kitchen a little bit to kind of be a little more user friendly when we're in transit, to where we don't have to keep putting 47 things away. It's just like 1 or 2 things and then we're done.
Right.
So there's that. I will say too, a lot of RVs come with a WineGuard 360 Plus now, which is functioning as your TV antenna when you first initially get it. It's typically up in the bedroom, but right underneath it on the roof side system, there's a little cap underneath there. You can purchase a Wi-Fi gateway that connects to that. There's power there. There's, depending on your RV of choice, if that dome's there and it's prepped for the gateway, there'll be power there and some other things. It's just a cell phone. It's a basic cell phone. If you're a weekend camper or you're a full-timer that's maybe retired that doesn't need a big internet setup, it's perfectly fine. That's the easiest way to go about the install process, because there's not much you have to do. It's kind of like installing a backup camera on a camper that's prepped.
Okay.
Everything's there. You just got to buy it, plug it in, and then, drill it up into the or secure it to your ceiling.
Yeah, secure it.
Yeah. You go to the extreme like what I did, then no, like for us in our Grand Design Solitude, we had a drop through area. We called it the void that was right behind our TV. And so we measured where that void was, how long it was, how wide it was, and we determined where we wanted to put that antenna, because we had to drill a 2-inch hole in our roof, because I had to drop those antennas down because it had to get to our router. Now, like in our Valor right now, so spoiler on the solar, and I think you kind of know this, but we have 2 installations that we're looking at the moment. One is the more traditional, where everything goes up front.
On solar, not on
solar.
Wi-Fi.
Sorry, on the solar system. But you have to run all the cabling from the solar panels down to the what's called an MPPT, which is a solar controller. It's the charge controller essentially down to everything. So up front is the normal option in like the pass-through bay. The second option is actually in our toy hauler space.
Right.
Because we are heavier in this rig, we're on the higher end of what our truck can handle. And so because we don't haul around big, heavy toys, like we could put 3,000 pounds in our garage and not even think twice about it. It's capable of 5,000, by the way, assuming you're not going over axle ratings. Lots of disclaimers in there. But we could hypothetically figure out a way to put it in our toy hauler space. The question is, can we, and are we okay with it? And so if we do that, or we do anything where we're going to drop anything through the roof in the toy hauler space, I'm probably going to get the antenna, because our internet setup is now right there. It's
It is.
in one of, I call it the tech cabinet. It's right there, kind of right when you first walk in. And so it'd be real easy. Like I wouldn't even need but a foot of cabling. And I could put it on top of the junction box, drop it right there. Now, if we don't do that, they still may drop the cabling back there. We're not 100% sure where that's going to go. And that's why I've been reluctant to go with a bigger antenna in that installation process. I would feel perfectly comfortable doing the whole again if I needed to, and then putting an antenna up there. It just kind of depends on what ends up happening. And so just remember, if you're thinking about doing something else that involves putting a hole in your roof, try not to do two if you can help it. Just do one.
And research the best way to seal it, make sure that it's watertight, all those sorts of things. And the good thing about like the little home internet boxes is that no drilling required.
Nope. Now, one thing you may want in the cell phone department would be like a cell booster. You still do have to run a wire inside. So you may have to put a teeny tiny hole, but it's not like, we're not talking anywhere near like maybe 1/4 inch or like quarter size, essentially. A hole to drop that cabling down, because it does have to connect. Or you can just come through, like some people will just come through like a slide seal if they don't want to set it up all the way. Like I see a lot of people doing Starlink that way, or just windows, or toy hauler spaces have the vents. They use those sometimes. So there's a lot of different options, but a cell booster in a nutshell, it does exactly what you think. It boosts your cell signal. So if you're operating on something that you don't necessarily want to put a big antenna up there, you could do something smaller like a WeBoost cell booster or something, where you just connect it to your ladder and then run the cabling inside, and it ups your signal strength.
What about the installation of Starlink? Does that require a big old satellite like a DirecTV satellite on top of your dish or on top of your rig?
Well, it definitely doesn't involve a satellite on top of your dish. Even though
never an
technically
option.
That's kind of what happens. It's just you're putting miles between them. So you do get what they call dishy. And there's a couple different versions of them now. The original is a circle. Now they're more rectangular. You can mount. You do have to put those somewhere. I will tell you the one downfall to Starlink is you have to have an unobstructed view. So it's not like a satellite, like a DirecTV, where it's like southern sky. They're a little all over the place. And so it just kind of depends on where you're at. If you use the app, it'll actually tell you where it's going to be roughly. And then you can scan your area to see if you think you have decent coverage or not. We have the ability. We had a ladder mount for it. Now we have a suction cup mount for it, because we don't have a ladder on this coach. We have a extendable ladder that we can move, so it's not permanently there. But you do have to have it where you're not like obstructed by a tree. So like if you're watching this on YouTube, you can kind of see this tree. I know it's a little blown out in the window, but you can kind of see that tree right there. So like we couldn't put Starlink right here. It wouldn't connect very well. Whereas if we go all the way to the back of the coach or way out in front of the coach, you can. So even though we had mounting systems, I always kept the little mount just in case we needed it. But that does have to go up. They do have an in-motion version. So if you're a motorhomer, so if you have a big Class A diesel, little Class B, whatever, the only difference is you can use this while you're actually driving down the road. I don't know when you have that need, unless you just have like a bunch of kids that really need to use the internet, so they leave you alone so you can drive safely. But you mount that on your roof somewhere, and it stays on all the time and connect. As long as there's a satellite to connect to, it connects. The downside to that, and like permanently mounting the other version, is if you back into a spot and there's a tree right in your way and nothing else, you lose the ability to move.
Right.
That's why I don't want to permanently mount ours. So, but I do have to run it. You also will have a Ethernet style cable. It's a proprietary cable from SpaceX that has to run into the router. That's what powers everything on it. So that does have to make it in. Typically what I did is I just put our router in our basement next to the electrical setup. They make all kinds of mounting solutions now. And then I just connected to via Wi-Fi, or like in our last coach, I was able to run an Ethernet cable and hardwire it.
So you have your internet, you have it functioning, you know what your needs are, you have it mounted. Are there other things that people should consider, like security? Like we do banking, we do different stuff like that. How do I make sure somebody's not hacking in, stealing my identity?
So a lot of that depends on the computer you're using. But, when it comes to the internet, there are different, like if you're going to go, you'll see this on like a lot of travel YouTubers channels, like Kara and Nate has it a lot, where they'll promote like a VPN. If you ultimately want the most amount of security, you're going to have to do a VPN, which stands for virtual private network. It's something that you pay a subscription for, but then you can change your location. You can literally change your location down the street. It doesn't matter. But what it does is it puts a buffer between your IP address, which is like your personal thumbprint for your computer system, to somewhere else. So if someone goes to hack in, they hit a dead end wall because there's nothing behind that second wall except for the VPN service. And so they don't know. I mean, it'd take a really advanced hack to get all the way past that. And I guarantee those people are going after the government. It's not us. The other side of that is if you have like a Pepwave router like we do. So like, let's say you're going to rebroadcast Wi-Fi. Let's say you're mooch docking somewhere that has good Wi-Fi, not a campground. So we're at my parents' house and they've got really good Wi-Fi. And I want to use their Wi-Fi in my coach. So by having my Pepwave router, I can go into the backside settings. It's not just automatic. You do have to tell it this. Log into the Wi-Fi, prioritize it one, and it'll take their Wi-Fi and broadcast it in our coach. And now that I'm saying this, I realize I haven't said this yet. So we always have the same Wi-Fi. I'll even tell you what it is. It's Miller's in Motion. Shocker.
Shocker.
So if you roll up in a campground and you see Miller's in Motion pop up on your Wi-Fi signal, for starters, good luck. It's a good password. You're not getting in. But you can come in. You'll know we're there. So that, like all of our computers, phones, TVs, everything is connected to that Wi-Fi. So when we roll up to a place that either has really good Wi-Fi or we switch to cell, I don't have to relog everything back in.
Exactly. That makes life so much easier when we move a lot.
And so all I do is I open up on my phone or on my computer. If we change locations, I'll at some point just pull that up and I'll figure out what's the best sources there. Sometimes it's campground Wi-Fi. Sometimes, like if we're at my parents' house, we'll go back to that. Like they have really good Wi-Fi. I can take their Wi-Fi that has its own IP address, and then I have my IP address, and I'm essentially using my router to rebroadcast there. So it shows up as one device on theirs, and then I'm rebroadcasting it to Lord knows how many.
And to me, that is a benefit of having your own
system,
router or system, whatnot, is that you can do something like that. That way you're not always trying to reprioritize and new passwords and all kinds of things.
And I have it as automated as I possibly can. So like, for instance, our T-Mobile home internet box, and this is going to go back into our setup a little bit more of what we have now. So we have our Pepwave router with the paddle antennas, which are just right there on the thing, which it's an okay signal. It's not the best, but it's also not bad. It's working fine. And then the 5G home internet box from T-Mobile at the moment is, in our current location, is our primary. So it's got its own antenna, own everything else. So even if I put this big, expensive, fancy antenna on the roof, it's not doing diddly squat at the moment because the T-Mobile's winning it. So then I have that hard lined into the Pepwave with an Ethernet connection because that's the fastest. If you can avoid Wi-Fi, try, because it slows everything down. So that's wired in under our WAN, and so that's rebroadcasting through our Miller's in Motion. Now, like if for us, Starlink's not our primary, and to be honest, we haven't even used it in a few months. It's only when we don't have any other options because it's by far our most expensive option. At the time of filming, it's $150 a month. You can pause it whenever you want. Now, if they go up, you're subject to that.
Right.
But you're subject to it anyway, as I found out. So it doesn't really matter if you're paused or not. So if we decide to head west or we get somewhere like we don't have signal and she absolutely has to be on the internet or something, I'll reactivate it. You do have to have some internet connection to log in to reactivate it. But if you can find, like, go to a Starbucks or something, just literally get online, reactivate it, go back, power it up, then that router is connected via wireless at the moment to that router. And then the same thing happens. After it does its power up phase, it then rebroadcasts back. I just have to go in and reprioritize it on the backside. So
that's a good point about cost, because technically you can just bring your cell phone that you already have and rely on the campground Wi-Fi if you don't need much of anything at all, and understand that that's all you get. And I guess technically that's free.
Read a good book.
That's right.
Even though this is about
Kindle.
Internet. Nope, not a Kindle. You need Wi-Fi for that.
Yeah, but you can download them before you go.
Make sure you got them downloaded first if you got a Kindle.
All the way up to the most expensive option so far has been Starlink at $150 a month, if that's your only, but most people will carry multiples to an extent.
And that's one thing that I get, especially from like full-timers kind of understand, and I say that work nomads understand. So because there's full-timers that are retired that don't need as robust of a system. So I think the biggest thing when you're picking a system or trying to understand what you need is understand what you want to use it for before you ever go down that road.
Right. Understand what questions to ask to make sure to get you a system that will meet some of those needs. Now, this falls into the miscellaneous category.
14.
One of the things about our old system that I liked, and I don't remember the term, was that we could have 2 or 3 different things plugged in and it would like mesh them together. Remember that?
Yeah, so that's a Pepwave Wireless Solutions exclusive. At least I think it is. They called it, what did they call it? speed fusion. So what it was is you could take multiple, and when we can still technically do it, we just have to pay for it. I don't want to pay for it. So what it is taking, so if you have multiple signals on at one time, so let's say we have our T-Mobile into the Wi-Fi or the WAN, and I've got a cell card in the Pepwave itself pulling in, and I've also got campground Wi-Fi coming in. So I can pick two of those things and fuse them together. Now, it doesn't sound, this gets a little complicated. So it's not like it's combining the two. So if they both have a 10 gig down or 10 megabyte down, sorry, it's not like you magically get 20.
Right.
What it does is it uses a prioritization system internally. Now, it's automatic, so as long as you put those in the same priority, it's going to try and use them together, assuming you have the service turned on. But what it does is, like, let's say I'm uploading a video and my computer is using the most internet, and we're also trying to watch TV, and it's kind of fritzing out. Well, if I put those two things together and speed fuse them together for Pepwave, then what happens is it will take my computer and say, okay, this thing's using a ton, and this internet source over here on cell is the best one right now, so let's push it to there. But that frees up this other signal. So, hey, you know what? This TV's trying to stream Netflix or whatever. We're going to take that and put it on this other source down here. And so it kind of separates and prioritizes things. It's not truly combining the two things.
Right.
It's just, it's playing traffic cop.
It was, but that means we don't have to.
Right.
And so it was always really smooth, I guess was the thing I liked.
It was. I know, like, the spot that we're in now, like, it wouldn't make a lot of sense because we only really have one service that is overwhelmingly good. Mm-hmm. And so, like, that's in priority one and we're not going to mess with it. Now, one thing that it does automatically is, like, if let's say we had Starlink up and going, we don't, it's paused at the moment. But if we did, and it was in priority two, if priority one ever lost connection for some reason, it will automatically go down to priority two to use internet. Typically, you set priority based on what's the most stable connection at the time. If you had speed fusion, you would dump two of them into one spot. Speed fusion, you get, like, if you buy a Pepwave router, again, when we bought ours, you got it free for a year, and then you have to pay for it. I have no idea how much it costs because, to me, I got a little frustrated with it, honestly. I thought it should just be included all the time. Apparently it's not, and I wasn't willing to pay for it because I can also just as easily go on the back end and change things. And typically, at least in my experiences, you either have a lot of really good connections where you don't need speed fusion because one's enough, or you have a lot of really bad connections, which you don't need because speed fusion isn't going to do the job. And so there's not as many times that I went, oh, I really have to have these two connections. Mm-hmm. And so I can just as easily go, that's sucking, blop, and then fix it. Now, if I'm not around.
Exactly. That was where we got dicey. I liked that when you weren't around, it still worked.
Because I can't log into, you can set, I don't have it set up to remote into our router. Mm-hmm. You can do that. It's very complicated and it would require some things that I don't really want to go down. But you can do that. But as long as I can dial into our Wi-Fi or I can talk her through it, which is easy because we have it saved and all that good stuff, it's not that hard to get into. You can just change it yourself. So, and
just so you guys know, we are not diving into internet in motion. So, like, when we're driving down the road, we are not even touching that topic. That is a whole different podcast and a lot more technical. So we're steering away from that, just so you know. But is there anything that I missed?
I don't think so.
Okay, then.
I didn't know you were going to ask this question, so now I'm
slow motion.
So here's the fun about podcasts is I didn't know she was going to ask that, so now I'm recalling everything in the back of my mind while there's nothing for you to listen to. No, we hit a whole lot, so yeah. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
Okay, so I guess that means that she's done grilling me. So if you do have questions about internet, or maybe we didn't get to a topic, or something's changed and you're just curious, feel free to reach out to us. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can do that through the comments down below. If you're listening through this through your favorite podcast platform, there's a link to our website contact us form down there as well. Just fill that out and we will get back with you as soon as we possibly can.
And I promise I will let Ryan respond to the technical questions, not me.
And I will let Lauren proofread it. So you get something that's legible. Also, do us a huge favor. Like I was just saying down below, that contact us form, that same form takes you to our main links page at our website. So if you want to check out our Instagram, Facebook, our website, the Millers in Motion family, what's that? You're going to have to click to find out.
Merch.
Any deals we have, if you want to get a discount on More Ride or anything else, that's all right there. Do us a huge favor. Click that link, go down there. It also lets you engage with us, which kind of gives us some validation.
Oh, sad little Ryan.
For this whole thing, because we do this to connect with people, and sometimes it does feel like we're just staring into a blank lens, because we are, or just talking to each other, which we also are. But a little bit of interaction goes a long way for us. So that was a whole lot in a very short amount of time.
That was a whole lot. Good job.
Hopefully you understand everything about mobile internet now, and if you don't, let us know. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next week.